I stood on the cracked curb of the Hope Springs Rehab Center with two trash bags holding everything I owned, watching the highway until my eyes burned. My son, David, the boy I sold my wedding ring to put through college, had blocked my number and left me to rot in the gravel. I had been clean for 60 days, and this was my welcome home gift, a dead phone and a cold wind. Most people would say a mother deserves this silence after years of struggle, but David hadn't just ignored me. He had sent a text to the facility director that morning saying, "Dispose of her things, she isn't coming back." Does a child ever have the right to legally delete a parent? Or is David's betrayal a crime that blood can't wash away? A black SUV pulled up, the tires spitting gravel. The woman who stepped out looked like she belonged in a boardroom. "Helen Gable?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't offer a hug. She offered a key. "I'm Maya. 10 years ago, you were a nurse, and you gave a shivering runaway girl your coat and $20 for a bus ticket. I was that girl, and I just found out your son is selling your house at an open house right now." "Selling it?" I gasped. Maya opened her laptop on the hood of the car. "Not anymore, Helen. He filed a quitclaim deed 3 days ago. He used a forged signature. He didn't just leave you here. He robbed you blind while you were locked behind those gates." "He needs the money for his debts," I whispered. Maya looked at me with cold pity. "No, Helen, he needs it for his other life. I did a background check. David has a wife and a 2-year-old daughter in the next county over. You aren't a grandmother in his world. You're a dead relative he uses to get sympathy from his in-laws." "Get in," Maya commanded. She handed me a burner phone. "He thinks you're stuck in that facility for another week because he told them he'd pay for an extension. He doesn't know I've filed a stay of sale." But then her phone buzzed. "He's moving the furniture out, Helen. He's gutting the place tonight." "We need him to admit the forgery on camera," Maya said. She handed me a tiny earpiece. "I'm going to drop you off a block away. You're going to walk into the house alone. He thinks you're a broken addict. Let him believe it. Let him brag. I'll be recording everything." I pushed the front door open. The living room was empty. My mother's piano, my photos, everything was gone. David turned around, the phone slipping from his hand. "Mom?" he stammered. Then his face hardened. He stepped forward to block the hallway. "You're trespassing, Helen. I have the legal right to this property. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police to have you committed." He reached for his back pocket, pulling out a set of heavy industrial zip ties. My heart tightened. He wasn't just selling the house. He was prepared to physically restrain me until a transport team arrived to take me to a private ward I'd never leave. "David, please," I sobbed. A woman stepped out from the kitchen, young, blonde, wearing my favorite pearl necklace. "David, honey, is this the crazy aunt you told me about?" My son had brought his mistress into my home to help him pack my life into boxes. "Actually, David," Maya said, stepping into the foyer, "the police are already here, and so is your notary, Mr. Henderson. He just gave us a full statement about how much you paid him to stamp that forged deed." David's face went ghostly pale. He was trapped. "You think you're getting an offshore account?" Maya continued. "I've frozen all your assets, David. You've been embezzling from your in-laws' construction company. They're the ones who called me." David laughed, a jagged sound. "Call the cops, then. They won't touch me. I have the conservatorship papers signed by a judge. By the time you get a court date to challenge it, this house will be a parking lot, and I'll be in the Cayman Islands." I looked up at the smoke detector. A tiny red light blinked. "I didn't just bring Maya," I whispered. "I brought a live stream, David. 3,000 people just watched you admit to the embezzlement on your mother's YouTube channel." The police cruisers finally pulled away. taking David and his mistress into the night. But Maya didn't leave. She sat on the floor next to me. The money, Helen. The $500,000 David stole from my father's firm. Those men, the real owners, think you are the one who sabotaged the deal to keep the cash. They're coming. Maya reached into my trash bag and pulled out my old nursing shoes. She ripped the heel off one. Inside was a tiny, blinking GPS chip. David didn't just want you in a facility, she hissed. He wanted you to be a beacon. He planted this so his partners could find you if the money went missing. And according to my scanner, they're 3 minutes away. We need the original ledger, Maya commanded. We headed to the basement. I knelt in the dirt, clawing at the loose bricks behind the water heater. I pulled out a fireproof box. Inside were 3 passports, David's face, different names, and a birth certificate for a son I never knew existed. A son named after my father. The betrayal felt like a physical weight in my chest. Helen, look at the lid, Maya said. A small, blinking red light. Opening the box had triggered a silent alarm. The front window didn't just break, it detonated. A heavy flashbang grenade rolled across my hardwood floor, and for 3 seconds, the world was nothing but white noise and screaming light. I felt Maya's hand clamp onto my shoulder, shoving me toward the basement door just as the first tactical boot stepped through the shattered frame. Down! Get to the crawl space! Maya hissed. I saw red laser dots dancing across the basement door. Not 1, but 4. They weren't just looking for the ledger. They were using thermal imaging. They could see our heartbeats through the floorboards. I grabbed the fireproof box, the metal cold against my sweaty palms, and shoved it into the bottom of the old laundry chute. If they get the box, we're dead, I whispered, my voice shaking. Suddenly, a thick, sweet scent filled the basement. It wasn't just the dryer vent anymore. They're pumping in a sedative, Maya gasped, pulling her shirt over her nose. They don't want a messy kill. They want to knock us out, take the ledger, and then let the house accidentally burn with us inside. I grabbed a bucket of floor sealant and dumped it into the floor drain, hoping to block the back pressure, but the air was getting thinner. Henderson, the notary who forged my life away, appeared at the small, reinforced basement window. He wasn't holding a legal seal anymore. He was holding a high-pressure industrial torch. The blue flame hissed, eating through the window frame like paper. "The girl dies, Helen," he roared over the sound of the torch. "Just slide the box under the door and you can walk out the back. I'll tell them you were never here." I looked at Maya. Her eyes were watering from the gas, but she gripped her silver pistol with white knuckles. "He's lying, Helen. He's the one who cleared the disposal of your belongings at the rehab center. He's been waiting to erase you for months." I remembered the old nursing station emergency drills from 20 years ago. I reached into the dark corner of the storage room and grabbed a heavy green canister of industrial oxygen, left over from my home care days. I didn't open the valve. I rolled it toward the basement window where Henderson's torch was melting the glass. "You want a spark, you coward?" I yelled. I grabbed a heavy iron wrench and smashed the top of the canister just as the blue flame touched the glass. The explosion didn't just break the window. It sent Henderson flying back into the bushes, the pressure waves slamming the basement door shut and sealing us in. We used the smoke from the blast to scramble up the service stairs and into the garage. It was pitch black, smelling of oil and old tires. But as I reached for the manual release cord, a shadow detached itself from the wall. A man in a tailored charcoal suit stood by the dryer, his hand resting calmly on the severed gas line. It wasn't a collector. It was Arthur, David's father-in-law, the man who owned the very company David had been robbing. "David is a pathetic thief, Helen," Arthur said, his voice as smooth as ice. He thought he was being clever, diverting funds into your dead accounts. But I was the one who suggested it. I needed a trail of breadcrumbs that led straight to an addict's house. I didn't just want the money back, I wanted the insurance payout from this entire block's development. He flicked a gold lighter. The small flame danced, reflecting in his cold, dead eyes. I realized then that the dryer leak was a distraction. Arthur pointed to the ceiling. A second yellow line had been tapped into the main heater. The timer is set for 3 minutes, Helen. That's how long it takes for the local precinct to respond to a gas leak call. By the time they arrive, there won't be enough of you left to put in a coffin. David will be the grieving son who lost his mother to a relapse accident, and I'll be the billionaire who buys this land for pennies. Maya lunged forward, her gun raised, but Arthur didn't flinch. 2 more men stepped out from behind my old sedan, their silencers pointed at her chest. "Drop it, Maya," Arthur commanded. "Your father and I have been partners for 30 years. Don't throw your life away for a woman who gave you a coat a decade ago." Maya's hand trembled. She looked at me, then at the box in my arms. "He's right, Helen," she whispered. Her voice tightened. "I can't beat them all." I felt the rage of 20 years of nursing, 20 years of being invisible, boil over. "You think I'm just an addict?" I stepped into the light of Arthur's lighter. I held up the burner phone Maya had given me. The YouTube stream wasn't just for the house, Arthur. I've been a nurse for a long time. I know how to document a patient's decline. This phone has been transmitting your voice to the state's server for the last 10 minutes. Maya's firm isn't just a law office, it's a federal task force. Arthur's face twisted into something monstrous. He didn't drop the lighter. He dropped his hand toward the gas valve. "Then we all go together," he screamed. But as he moved, a high-pitched chirping started from the fireproof box. It wasn't a silent alarm for him. It was a thermal trigger I had activated when I smashed the oxygen tank. The box was now a localized EMP jammer. The digital timer on the gas lines started flickering. 005, 0088, error. The house didn't explode. The silence was deafening. In that second of digital confusion, Maya fired. Not at Arthur, but at the overhead light. Glass showered down as we were plunged into total darkness. I knew this garage better than my own name. I grabbed a heavy bag of rock salt from the winter stash and swung it blindly. I heard a grunt and the sound of a heavy body hitting the concrete. "The laundry chute!" I yelled. "The bag exit is through the chute!" We crawled through the dark, but as we reached the chute, a hand grabbed my ankle. It was Henderson. He was burned, his clothes smoldering, and his eyes were wide with a manic, flickering light. "The ledger," he choked out, his grip like a vice. "Give me the ledger and I'll let you go." I didn't use the gun. I didn't use the wrench. I grabbed the heavy, fireproof box and slammed it down onto the hand that had forged my signature. I felt the bone snap. I didn't feel sorry. We scrambled through the chute and tumbled out onto the wet grass of the backyard. The sirens were close now, real sirens, not the ones in my head. But as we ran for the tree line, a set of headlights cut through the fog. A black SUV. It wasn't the police. It was David, my son. He was out on bail, and he looked like a man who had lost his mind. David hopped out of the car, a tire iron in his hand. "Mom, give me the box. Arthur is going to kill me if I don't give him the ledger. He said he'd forgive the debt. Please, Mom, I'm your son." He was crying, but it wasn't the cry of a child. It was the cry of a predator who had run out of places to hide. I stood my ground, clutching the scorched box to my chest. "You sold your mother for a debt, David. You don't get to call me that anymore." "He's lying to you, David," Maya yelled from the shadows. "Arthur is standing in your garage right now with a lighter. He was never going to forgive you. You were the fuse." Just then, the garage finally gave way. A low, thumping growl echoed as the backup manual pilot light caught the remaining gas. The garage didn't level the block, but the fireball was enough to throw David backward into his own windshield. I walked over to my son as he lay groaning in the shattered glass of his luxury SUV. I didn't help him up. I reached into his pocket and pulled out his ID and his gold credit card. "I'm taking back the tuition money, David," I said, my voice as flat as a heart monitor. "And the interest." As the police swarmed the yard, pinning Arthur and Henderson to the grass, Maya walked up to me. She was covered in soot, her expensive suit ruined. She held out a small velvet pouch she had snatched from Arthur during the struggle. Inside was a single, heavy brass key with a Swiss bank emblem. "This is the offshore account, Helen. The $500,000 isn't in the house. It's in Zurich, and David already signed the power of attorney over to the estate of Helen Gable when he thought you were dead." I looked at the key, then at my son being loaded into a cruiser. I realized I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was the owner of his entire world. "There's one more thing," Maya said, her eyes turning toward the burning house. "The notary didn't just forge the deed. He forged a life insurance policy in my name, Helen. My father was going to kill me tonight, too. We were both meant to be ghosts." I looked at the girl I had saved 10 years ago. We weren't just a nurse and a runaway anymore. We were the only two people left standing in a field of ash. Arthur's phone, lying in the grass, began to buzz. It was a text from an unknown number. "Is the debris cleared? The buyers are waiting." I picked it up. I typed back 3 words. "Debris is speaking." The pacing hit its peak as the fire trucks began dousing the flames. I stood in the middle of the street, the fireproof box in one hand and the Swiss key in the other. I looked at the neighbors peering through their curtains, the people who had watched me be dragged to rehab and never said anything. I didn't feel shame. I felt power. I looked at the smoking ruins of the room where I used to read David bedtime stories. I can still smell the baby powder and the old wood. I remember the way he used to cry when he had a nightmare, and I would tell him the monsters weren't real. I was wrong. I raised the monster. I fed it. And tonight, I had to kill it. The morning light hit the smoking ruins of my life. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just walked to the black town car and opened the door. "Move," I told the driver. He looked at the father-in-law, then at the smoking garage, and he moved. We flew through the night. The other mother lived in a trailer park. She looked just like me. Same hair, same tired eyes. When she saw me, she didn't scream. She just sat down. "He told me you were happy in heaven," she whispered. The pension wasn't a pension. It was the payout from my husband's life insurance that David had diverted. He had been playing 2 mothers against each other for a decade. He was using her to launder the construction firm's money. "We need to call him," I told the other woman. "Together." We put David on a 3-way call from the jail. When he heard both our voices, he started to wail, not because he was sorry, but because he knew the double dip was over. The other mother, Sarah, grabbed the phone. "I sold your childhood trophies to buy bread, David. You told me the insurance money ran out. I'm giving my testimony to the state today." "There's no money left, David," I told him. "I just signed the papers. I've donated the remains of the estate to the Hope Springs Rehab Center. In your name. You're going to be their biggest donor, and you're going to be their longest-serving, voluntary patient once you're out of prison." Maya arrived an hour later with a fleet of state vehicles. "We've seized the construction firm, Helen. The father-in-law is in custody, and the other family in the next county, they've already vanished. They were hired actors, paid by the firm to keep David under control." I looked at the woman who had used me as bait. "Are we even now, Maya?" I asked. She handed me a small velvet box. Inside was my wedding ring, the one David had stolen and sold years ago. Not even close, she said, but it's a start. I returned to the Hope Springs Rehab Center 1 week later. This time, I wasn't standing on the curb with trash bags. I was in a black town car. I watched as David was led out of a transport van in orange jumpsuits, his head bowed. He saw me through the window. He reached out a hand, his lips moving. Mom. I didn't roll down the window. I just signaled the driver to pull away. I looked at the charred remains of my front door. I thought about the little boy I used to tuck in. I thought about the way he used to hold my hand. How do you go from that to this? I had spent my life being his safety net, and he had turned that net into a noose. I loved you, David. I would have died for you. I sat on the porch of a small cottage by the sea, a place Maya helped me find. I had no house, no son, no furniture. But as the sun began to rise, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt light. A letter arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single $20 bill and a note saying, "For the bus ticket, M."